Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome to our conversation on the new partnership we just announced between Worldcoin and Alchemy. If you didn't see it, the announcement was yesterday, and we announced that Alchemy was selected as the infrastructure partner for Worldchain. Now, in addition to running the infrastructure for Worldchain, we also announced that developers will have access to the full Alchemy developer platform, which in my opinion is the most complete and comprehensive available, starting day one. So we're going to dive more into Worldchain itself in a bit, and then also, of course, the details around the partnership. We've got a couple of really great guests with us today, and I will just let them introduce themselves. First, I'd like to turn it over to Noam from Alchemy. So Noam, just give us an intro.
Thanks, Stephen. Really excited to be here and really excited for this partnership. My name is Noam. I'm on the engineering team at Alchemy. I lead our rollups efforts and our wallet infrastructure efforts, and I'm really excited to be here with everyone.
All right, thanks. Great to have you, Noam. And Liam, you want to give an intro?
Yeah, my name is Liam. I'm an advisor in the Worldcoin Foundation helping launch Worldchain, as well as super early contributed to Optimism and generally scaling fan of Ethereum.
All right, very good. And I'm Stephen Smith. I'm the head of protocol at Tools for Humanity. Tools for Humanity is a key contributor to the Worldcoin project. The company actually helped incubate and launch the project. My role here is head of protocol, and that kind of covers the area, everything to do with blockchain. So Worldchain is a key project for me and a key focus over the past several months, and in the coming months, of course, as we look to eventually launch. So let's start. We'll start just so everyone has a level set on Worldchain. We announced Alchemy is going to be the infrastructure provider for Worldchain. They have a brand new roll-up as a service offering. We're super excited about that. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But first of all, for those that may not be familiar, what is Worldchain? We announced Worldchain back in April, and it is the first blockchain designed for humans. So it's focused on a very practical, everyday identity and finance applications with real-world utility that place a premium on what we call proof of personhood, which is a Sybil-resistant primitive, which allows you to do a lot of great things with your apps. And Sybil resistance, we'll talk a bit more about that, of course, as we go. But it's been a fundamental challenge in computer science before Web3 even. But at any rate, Worldchain is geared, kind of a human-first blockchain to give priority to human verified transactions. So verified world ID holders, which is what we call our proof of person credential, will get priority block space and a free gas allowance for what we call casual transactions. Now that's a term. What does that mean? It means just our average user, we have a profile of the transaction mix, and it's just kind of the common usage on a monthly basis, maybe transfers, maybe some swaps, et cetera. But a key in having our own chain is multifaceted. One is just our ability to be able to scale the Worldcoin workload. On any given day, we're about 50% of the workload on OP mainnet. And so we want to get in an environment where we have a little bit more control over scalability options. Now, we're also very excited. So Worldchain is built on OP Stack. OP Stack is, of course, call it the roll-up SDK from the Optimism teams. We're very excited to build on that. We migrated to Optimism from Polygon last year, prior to our launch in July. We've been super happy, love working with the teams. We're already working in a core dev group on Optimism to help push it forward. And we think of a lot of the things that we want to do from a scalability perspective are going to benefit the other chains running in the superchain ecosystem. So we're super excited about that, super excited to be a part of the superchain and just collectively push everything forward. Yeah, so that's kind of a spin, the background on Worldchain, again, for those that may not be familiar. Liam, let me just kick it over to you because you're clearly incredibly well-versed in this space and have a history that even predates mine in terms of working on some of these type problems. But yeah, so you just want to provide some context on what we're building and its importance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way to think about Worldchain in my mind is there's two major goals. One is scaling Worldcoin, the actual protocol itself. And you already said some of the stats, I think, that are kind of mind-blowing. Like the one that I always love to reference is that if you look at the shareable L2 transaction fees on OP mainnet, Worldcoin, it's frequently around like 50%. And I'm looking at it right now. It's in the past 2 weeks, 48.6%. All L2 transaction fees on OP mainnet are via Worldcoin. And I think it's really counterintuitive because people don't necessarily think of it as that, because You might think, oh, it's the iris scans, it's the orb, it's this kind of crazy project, but the scale of it is enormous. And so that this, if it continues to grow, which it looks like it's going to very quickly reach just saturation of what's possible on OP mainnet. And so it just makes total sense to have its own kind of container to scale with its own chain. So that's the first part. And a big chunk of that, in addition to having its own state space, it's not going to be affected by congestion of any other applications, is also being able to give a bit more control to the Worldcoin Foundation and the Worldcoin ecosystem to decide how to evolve that chain. As an example, running REST as like the underlying sequencing software, once that gets to, now it's at 1.0, but once it gets a kind of production support from the Optimism ecosystem, is going to be a big part of this chain. It's going to be fun with Alchemy and others supporting that. And the second thing, in addition to scaling WorldCoin, is being a bit of a home base for the ecosystem. And when I think of ecosystem, I'm not thinking, oh, let's get more DeFi apps and more NFT apps, and those are great, but there's literally 10 plus million people that are in countries like Argentina or in Chile or in Portugal and in places oftentimes where folks really need access to the US dollar and really need access to a stable set of tools around their finances. This gives more so access to developers in the blockchain world to build for that audience. Not necessarily as a place to build net new crazy crypto apps, which is always fun and great, but there's literally an audience that's growing consistently month over month that need the basics of blockchain. And this is going to be kind of a home base for developers to target that user base. And, in the next handful of years, if the product continues growing at this clip, will be literally a significant percentage of people. So I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. That's incredibly well said. Noam, you and I have actually done like a couple of kind of press briefings over the last couple of days. So I was telling some folks at TFH, you do such an incredible job in talking about Worldcoin and kind of partnership aside for a moment, even WorldChain aside for a moment, just talking about Worldcoin and its kind of value. So you want to just add a bit there, and then we'll get into the partnership in a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to talk about WorldCoin because I think fundamentally it's tackling one of the most important problems of this generation. And as we're seeing more and more people move online, the problem you mentioned earlier in civil resistance and determining who is a human on the internet and enabling human forward applications, this is paramount to continue to scale the human internet relationship well. And Liam really excellently captured a lot of the points earlier, but there's some 8 billion people on the planet right now. And for WorldChain to be the human forward blockchain over time, it needs to be able to scale to handle that kind of load. So I think WorldChain is the first milestone in decoupling and taking control over a lot of the scaling and execution requirements we need to get to global scale systems and enable application developers to build human forward applications on top of WorldChain and WorldID. So I'm really excited to start on the scaling journey with you guys here. And as Steven mentioned, I think the problem of civil resistance, it comes up all the time now, and it's not a new problem in Web3. I think people hear about it in Web3 in the context of airdrops and civil farmers trying to gain airdrops for tokens, but you see it all the time on the internet of trying to distinguish between who is a human and who is a bot. And I think a topic on everyone's mind these days is like content provenance and content authenticity and distinguishing, hey, was this made in a bot farm or was this made by a real person on the internet? And WorldID really sets the platform to enable humans navigating the internet to more seamlessly distinguish between these two actors and lean into the human-centric nature of connecting everyone on the internet. So really excited to partner with everyone on that.
All right, very good. And yeah, we could actually have a Twitter space on scalability just by itself, because the stats, we look at these kind of stats quite a bit, and it's just, the math is a bit linear in a sense at the moment in terms of current workload associated with Worldcoin and projections of what that might be in the future and what that means for kind of the limits of blockchain scalability at the moment. So that's why we're so excited to have Alchemy as a partner on this, because they have a very long history of successful support for Web2, Web3 businesses, reliability, scalability, and support at scale. And that's what we're really after. So with that, it's a great transition into talking about the partnership a little bit more. We talked about WorldChain a bit. And so let's talk about the partnership and why that's so important. Let's start again with a bit of background. Noam, why don't you just give us some background on Alchemy? We may have people listening to the space or listening to the recording later that are not super familiar with Alchemy. I've known about Alchemy and been working with Alchemy way before I ever got to the Worldcoin project, and just think incredibly highly of the company and the team there. But you want to give us the background, the backstory on Alchemy?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few people might actually know is that Alchemy actually started on the application layer. This is some 8 odd years ago. And very quickly, this is before my time, realized that the infrastructure in Web3 was really hard to develop against. And for the past 7 years, the core focus has been running reliable, scalable, enterprise-grade Web3 infrastructure. And we've started just on Ethereum. And for much of Alchemy's history, we were operating just on L1. But with the transition to rollups and with the addition of other blockchains, we've been running reliable node infrastructure across the board. So Ethereum, a lot of the superchain networks, Optimism, Base, now Worldchain, and many other EVM and non-EVM networks. And our core thesis has always been we want to enable developers to build the best applications to enable 1 billion users on chain. And reliable, scalable infrastructure is a huge component of that, but so are other developer primitives. And one thing you mentioned that we're really excited about earlier is that this partnership brings not just Alchemy's sequencer offering and Alchemy's node offering to Worldchain, but Alchemy's complete developer platform. And we want to enable streamlined developer experiences on anyone building Web3 apps. And that includes pieces like smart account infrastructure. Coin is one of probably the biggest app using smart accounts today. They're leveraging safes for each account in the World app. And there is some infrastructure needed to facilitate smart account transactions at scale. So we're excited to provide that for the Worldchain with 4Q7 infrastructure. And on the flip side of that too, there's a lot of complexity in getting data to and from blockchains. And so we'll be providing Alchemy's full data services suites of APIs, indexing solutions, and other developer and debugging tools that will be available for all Worldchain developers. We're excited to bring this comprehensive suite over to Worldchain and continue to push it forward with reliable and scalable software.
Okay, that's a perfect background on Alchemy. And again, I've been a fan for quite a while, but I do want to talk a bit about the decision to go with Alchemy and what led us to select Alchemy as our infrastructure provider. We've been partnered with Alchemy at some level before we even launched last year. And again, a number of us, even before we got to the Worldcoin project, had experience with Alchemy. And the key thing that came for me, especially as being in the protocol area, is just reliability and the service levels around what we're providing. I came from the Zcash project from the Electric Coin Company. Of course, that was a layer 1 blockchain, but in absolute, the most fundamental primitive around that chain and about Worldchain will be safety, security, stability. And we looked for a partner that was experienced at enterprise scale, that had an incredibly robust architectural, infrastructure plan and deployment to be able to manage the tech stack components within any rollup in particular, but those built on OP Stack in our case. And we were super pleased with two things. One, Alchemy's track record in that sense as an enterprise blockchain infrastructure provider. But then two, being able to enable the developers building on Worldchain, providing them access to, again, in my opinion, the most comprehensive developer tool set out there, just made it just an incredibly interesting opportunity for us and a choice. I mean, it just checks so many boxes for us. We talked about the infrastructure. We talked about the dev platform. And another thing we're all about, Worldcoin is all about, a world ID, proof of person, Sybil resistance, like we talked about a bit at the intro. And another exciting part of this partnership is we're going to explore opportunities to integrate World ID. So we're going to look at integrating World ID into some of the existing Alchemy tools. Alchemy runs a number of boot camps and has educational materials, and they're an incredible home for onboarding developers into Web3. So World ID will be promoted throughout those boot camps, educational material, and then just integrated in the tool set, which we've always thought of World ID basically as infrastructure, right? World ID is infrastructure, and a term we've been using recently is infrastructure for the human web, all right? In the age of AI, if you will, to use a phrase that we use quite often here, being able to distinguish human activity from bots or AI is going to become increasingly important. And we see World ID as a key fundamental piece of that infrastructure. So Noam, back to you for a moment. In your opinion, I want to do two things. One, I'd call it generically the the developer platform, but I know you clearly know way more about it. So is there anything else we can add that we hadn't already said about the tool set? And then two, just in your opinion, your thoughts around World ID?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot about the tool set, and folks can always check more about it at alchemy.com. But I do think like we've been iterating both with Worldcoin and with Optimism on this partnership long before today. As Stephen mentioned, we've been pretty astounded by the spectacular growth of the Worldcoin protocol on Optimism mainnet, now at 50% of total transaction volume on that network, and have been like helping scale that in the background. So been working with those folks for quite some time. And similarly, we've had partnerships in place with Optimism for multiple years now and helping navigate this transition to the superchain, and had some tours of duty there as well, including supporting the public endpoint during the airdrop a few years back. And so a lot of really good connections with the OP ecosystem as well. So excited to continue to bring that to WorldChain and to the superchain more broadly. As for World ID, again, I think you phrased it perfectly, Stephen. Infra for the human web is exactly how I think about it. And solving this problem of Sybil resistance is applicable not just in Web3, but in all ecosystems online generally. And so we're quite excited. There's multiple ways we're working to potentially integrate it into Alchemy. Very prominent example where we struggle with Sybil resistance is on our faucets. So we enable developers to come drip testnet tokens for easy access of development, but over times there have been attacks from bots on these faucets to try to drain all the test ETH supply. And so one simple way to plug in World ID is, hey, we want to make sure that humans get disproportionately rewarded on the faucets. If you validate or verify with World ID, you get bigger drip. I think there's plenty of other surface areas you want to use it as a core internet authentication protocol. So even signing into the Alchemy dashboard, signing into Alchemy University, issuing credentials on Alchemy University, integrating it in with our wallet services infrastructure. So new accounts on chain get Sybil resistance on the way, and continuing to help power WorldChain as a platform, not just for the World app, but for all developers that want to build human forward applications.
All right, perfect. Yeah, no, incredibly well said. We'll just kind of transition to looking ahead, right? This is the announcement with Alchemy and the partnership here is a major milestone on the way to eventually launching WorldChain mainnet. So Liam, back to you. So do you want to just kind of talk about some of the, what's next for WorldChain? What do you see coming and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for anyone listening is there are, 10, maybe actually now I think it's 12, it keeps growing, plus million people that are actively either using the World app or have kind of an account with WorldCoin and are being verified either via the device or via the orb. And they're active. They are engaged with WorldCoin. And the plan effectively is let's give them more cool stuff to use. If you're listening to this, I would really strongly consider in places like Argentina, Chile, Spain, Portugal, Germany, how can you build a useful tool or product for that audience that maybe it's stablecoin related, maybe it's a lending product, maybe it's something else, or maybe it takes advantage of the fact that you have people in those geographies to begin with that have a verifiable proof of humanness. What kind of application can you build for them? Because very soon, I'd say in a handful of weeks, there's going to be a dev preview. You can start building your application to launch in front of all those folks. And then later on I don't want to give the exact time, but later on this year, the full thing will go live. And you could be one of the really early partners that are targeting that user base. So I would just start thinking about that. One really simple idea that I had that I was excited by is, especially in Argentina, there's a lot of folks that have the World app or in general are using WorldCoin, and that's consumers as well as merchants. And so if you could build even a simple app that let people pay directly at a store or at a coffee shop or anything via WorldCoin on WorldChain, there's already that user base activated. You just need to get the right interfaces in front of them and have the right sort of contracts on WorldChain. So the user base is there. It's just a matter of getting really good applications in front of them. So yeah, look out for the dev preview, a couple of weeks. There'll be a lot of stuff at ETC, and then later on this year, get excited to launch your production application.
All right, excellent. And Noam, you want to give us kind of an update on the Alchemy side in terms of getting the infrastructure ready, and then just anything else exciting happening at Alchemy in general? Doesn't have to be WorldChain related at all you'd like to mention.
Yeah, for sure. I'll start by saying the points Liam just made get me super excited. I think it's really exciting way to envision how Web3 scales, leveraging WorldChain and proof of humanhood as a core internet primitive. Yeah, this conversation just got me really excited about the next year and the roadmap ahead of us. I think we're working closely with TFH and the Worldcoin Foundation on setting the milestones to get to a public WorldChain launch. As Liam mentioned, stay tuned for updates on timelines there. And while we're working with WorldChain on all of this, there's just a lot of advancements in the general rollup ecosystem. So the OP stack very recently announced support for fraud proofs and the move to stage 1 rollups, and that'll be a part of WorldChain mainnet very soon. So excited to see the continued push to decentralization. Similarly, where we just saw that RETH, as Liam mentioned, got to 1.0 yesterday, and they're on a quest to continue to scale core Web3 infrastructure. So we're keeping an eye out for OP RETH stability and are excited to work with that team on this surface area as well and leveraging RETH scaling capabilities on WorldChain. So lots to be excited about in the general rollup ecosystem and pushes to more progressive decentralization and higher scalability. And then we're really excited to iterate with developers on WorldChain, get their feedback, make sure that they have the tools and services and support they need to build global scale human-forward applications. I think Liam's example of like merchants paying attention to the surface areas is super salient. And there's a lot of core primitives to streamline that developer experience to build applications with great UX, leveraging rollups, leveraging smart accounts, leveraging data primitives that can provide a lot of value to the end users and like continually abstract away some of the technology under the hood, but provide them really powerful primitives around like proof of personhood on the internet, instant settlement, global transactions, and everything that we're excited about in the space.
All right, very good. Yeah, just to reiterate, we've got a lot of exciting things we're going to be talking about really for the rest of the year, but upcoming will be like a dev preview that we're going to open up and a general launch later in 24. As both Noam and Liam mentioned a couple times, we're super excited about pushing the bounds of scalability in the superchain ecosystem and working with the teams from Paradigm and the Optimism teams on getting RETH production ready and everything we can do there. The best source generally on the WorldCoin side for info is worldcoin.org/blog. So you can go to that blog site and see info on the partnership, and then ditto on the Alchemy side, alchemy.com/blog. You can see the write-up on the partnership there. And just in general, those are two excellent resources just to keep up with what's going on with the projects and the companies. We also just announced our WorldCoin Community Grants Wave 1 winners. That was announced today. So check that out. A lot of great companies and projects getting involved with WorldCoin. We're super excited about that. Yeah. And with that, I'd like to thank both Liam and Noam for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. I always enjoy talking to you both. Usually we're not talking in a Twitter space, but it's great to have you on today. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And with that, I'd also like to thank everyone that joined the space today, those that are live and those that will be listening to the recording. And hope everyone has a good day.